Welcome to the Migraine Miracle Moment. I'm your host, Dr. Josh Turknett. I'm a neurologist, migraine specialist, migraine sufferer, and author of the book, The Migraine Miracle. In this podcast, you'll learn all about how to find your path to migraine freedom without pills. Let's get started. Howdy, folks. So welcome to another episode of The Miracle Moment. Today we have a special guest, another miracle success story, and this time it is from Migraie-NEVERLAND. And also we have another special guest on the podcast today, someone who will be joining me from now on these miracle success story interviews. Some of you know her from our Facebook group and Migraie-NEVERLAND community. It is, of course, my wife, Jenny. Hi, Jenny.
Hello.
So some of you also know that Jenny is the brains and creator behind all of our recipes. She wrote all the recipes for the book. She wrote all the recipes that are part of Primal Provisions, our weekly meal planning service, which is an incredible resource. The entire archive of those recipes is available to our Migraie-NEVERLAND members, and I recently was perusing that and couldn't believe it and how much was in there. So that's a tremendous treasure trove. And so I'm excited Jenny's going to be joining me on these interviews to help out, since she's a critical part of the Migraine Miracle universe. Jenny, I haven't quite figured out, why do I call you Jenny on the podcast and I call you Jen every other place in life?
I know, and it's actually very disarming to hear you call me Jenny.
But speaking of Migraie-NEVERLAND, if you are interested in becoming a member, you can check out more information by going to mymigrainemiracle.com and clicking on the resources tab at the top of the page. That will go through all of our 9 primary resources, including Migraie-NEVERLAND, which gets access to anything that we create. We are also, at the time of this airing, should have just launched our latest Keto Blast, which is our 30-day keto challenge. And we hold these regular 30-day challenges throughout the year. We just completed our first ever 30-day cheap sleep challenge, which was a lot of fun. And if you want to see the schedule of our remaining challenges for the year, head over to mymigraienemiracle.com/schedule. All right, so as mentioned, this episode is with Migraie-NEVERLAND. She has been a member of our Migraie-NEVERLAND community, and Jenny and I first encountered her when she was posting pictures of her life up in northern Quebec, where she raises sled dogs and really leads an ancestral existence off the grid, as you'll hear about, and has made some really remarkable improvements with her migraines after implementing the plan, and has been able to reclaim parts of her life that she had lost to the beast for the past several years. So really an inspiring story and an inspiring person. So without further delay, here's our interview with Migraie. All right, so today I am very excited to have Migraie-NEVERLAND on the podcast. Hi, Migraie.
Hello.
Hello. So Migraie joined Migraie-NEVERLAND about a year ago, I think, and we've really loved having her as part of our community. In our group, she's shared not only the successes she's had since implementing the plan, but also given us a little glimpse into what appears to be a really amazing life that she leads. And for those reasons, I really wanted to bring her onto the podcast so she could share her story with you. So, Migraie, could you just first tell us a little bit about your background, who you are, and maybe kind of how you spend your time these days?
Yes, but first of all, I would like to thank you for having me on your podcast, Dr. Turnkett, and
Oh,
Jenny
absolutely.
for having me, and all the support that you've given me in the last year. It's really, I'm getting emotional already. It has changed my life so much, and I feel really privileged to be having this chat today.
Well, thank you. We
So,
really
to
appreciate
give you
that.
a little bit of background, I've had migraine since I was a child. My first memory of a migraine is I'm a toddler, and I'm telling my mom there's a dog in my head that's barking. So I do think that because it probably was pounding in my head or something.
Mm-hmm.
I was diagnosed with chronic migraines about 20 years ago. I'm 40 years old now, and nothing really has helped me. And migraine here is, well, like in many places in the world, is still seen as something really obscure and non-existent, some kind of imaginary sickness, of course. So I have been battling with chronic pain for 20 years, and I discovered the migraine book in the academy in May of last year. And when I discovered it, I had a migraine for 9 days in a row, and I went low carb, well, almost keto, right away. And 3 days later, the migraine was gone. So that was saying a lot to me.
Sure.
And in the months that followed, I went from 26 days of migraine a month to 2 to 3 days, just a hormonal migraine.
So going back to your story, when you first started having migraines and over the years, had you seen doctors and had you tried various treatments?
Well, I come from a vegan family, and we are Native American.
Okay.
We are Maquininics. So whenever I would have a problem, my grandmother would give me some kind of plant, or and just the spirit will take care of it. But at some point, no. And so we were not really big on strong medication. I had been prescribed antidepressant for the migraine about 20 years ago, but for me it made no sense, and it had just started, and my GP was just like, oh, let's try that, like if it was a candy, or maybe it's gonna work. But I didn't feel confident that he was taking me seriously.
Right.
So I refused. Well, first of all, I refused the diagnosis for so long, and I refused medication. But then 10 years ago, I was willing to try anything, because it was really, I couldn't live anymore. So I tried about, I would say, all the medication that is out there. The only thing I didn't do yet is Botox, but I had tried everything else.
Had you had success
And
with
also,
anything?
no, and I also tried all the holistic approaches, like osteopathy, chiropractic, acupuncture, Chinese medicine, Vietnamese medicine, you can name them all.
Yep.
I did find some relief with CBD oil, but in Canada, it's really hard to get. Now it's legal, so it's a lot easier, but it's still hard to get. And that was the only thing that had helped me. And I had been prescribed triptans, all kinds of triptans, and using the triptans made everything worse. So I was taking so much medication, and I felt dizzy all the time, or I really had so many side effects.
Yeah.
That at one point I just said, okay, I'm going to stop everything.
Did you have
So to answer the question, I didn't have any success.
Did you have any success with triptans in the beginning? Did they help initially?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And Relpac and a few other medication at first. Oh, it was like a miracle. And you think, okay, I finally found something that's helping me. But not for long.
Right. And then things steadily kind of got worse and required more and more medications, right?
More medication, and the triptans, I had to sleep a lot longer so that they would become effective. And then it was almost a daily intake of triptan.
Right.
It was really bad, yeah.
So over the years, were there anything in particular that you'd identified as triggers or things that would bring on your migraines?
I had been journaling for about 10 years, trying, okay, cut the gluten, cut the sugar. I'm a yoga teacher. I'm a meditation teacher. I've been practicing meditation since I'm 16 years old.
Oh, wow.
Nice.
It's not the stress part. But I have to admit that I was developing some kind of anxiety of migraine, because you anticipate whenever it's going to come. And if you're driving, is it going to hit me when I'm an hour away from home and I'm going to lose sight because I get the blank spots in my eyes? And so you're always trying to stay relaxed and calm and not anticipating, but it's still there. But I had identified some triggers, like the pressure in the atmosphere,
Mm-hmm.
because here where we live, it's one day it can be 10 degrees Celsius and the next day it can be minus 15.
Oh, wow.
It
Wow.
changes so much. It's very difficult, but again, I felt that it was all in my head, and my GP at the time didn't know nothing about migraine, so kind of made me understood that it was all in my head.
Mm-hmm.
And at some point, I went to the ER because I was, my boss at the time thought that I was really too confused. I had a migraine for, I don't know, 20 days in a row or something.
Wow.
And the emergency doctor had a scan, and because I didn't have a tumor, didn't know what I had, so told me
Right.
that I should go home and make love, so that would ease my migraine. And I was like, I cannot drive home. I'm too confused for that. So I don't
Right.
think that making love is going to cut it.
Yeah, that's unfortunately a really common story. When you first started with the Migraine Miracle, what were some of the initial changes that you made?
I did everything at the same time.
Uh-huh.
So I started, well, first of all, I was vegan.
Right.
So I went from being vegan to cutting all cereals and all carbs, because I realized I was eating so much fruit, so much cereal, that I cut all that and I added the meat right away. I'm fortunate enough to have access to organic food.
Yeah.
And I had been eating organic for all my life. So I just continued eating organic food and no carbs. Like I tried under 20 grams of carbs daily. Well, I started walking more consciously because we live on a dog sanctuary. So it's we're working and walking and outside all day. But I tried to add some Nordic walking.
Mm-hmm.
And I really understood with the Migraine Academy, the Beasling Academy, I really understood, accepted, I should say, that I have to respect the normal cycle of my body.
Mm-hmm.
So when I feel that I begin a migraine, I rest, where
Mm-hmm.
before I would fight it. But now I know that if I respect my body and if I implement the plan, things are going to be okay. What I would really like you both to understand
Uh-huh.
is that coming across your work made me believe in the future,
That's great.
because all the neurologists that I had seen told me that it only would get worse with the years. And when you already have 26 days of migraine a month,
Yeah.
this is opening a door to very black thoughts, you know?
Right.
Yes, yes.
For sure. Yeah, I really appreciate you saying that, and that's a big part of what we want to do is offer hope in a space where there's not a lot being offered out there from the medical community and also some of the online communities.
Exactly.
So you mentioned that you transitioned from being vegan, and it sounds like you had been for quite a while. Was that challenging, or was it you were at the point where anything you would try, and that's what you did?
Well, I thought it would be really challenging for my body at least, but actually no. And I realized it feels like my body needed it and I didn't realize it because I was more conceptualizing that I didn't want to eat animals and all that. But when I decided to implement the plan, I thought I'm going to do this for my body for now. Let's just experiment this for now.
Yeah.
And the changes were like immediate. My husband says that I took a happiness pill.
Oh, wow.
Because I went from being a suffering person who doesn't sleep really well, and I had IBS, and nobody knew where it came from, and now I don't have any pain in my belly. My digestion is good. I sleep good. So it's being pain-free changes one's life.
Yeah.
So the vegan adding meat, it worked for a few months really well, and then I tried to do vegetarian keto. Then I realized I had milk allergy, so I tried the vegan keto. Yeah, so now I'm still experimenting.
Right. Yeah, I think we actually get a fair amount of people who come in asking about, whether it can work with vegan. And it does introduce its own challenges. And one thing I would sometimes advocate for folks is to just try the plan as is for a while, just to see, how you respond. And then once you kind of get yourself to a better place, then you can kind of experiment with, making it work and seeing if you can modify the diet to sort of what your needs are, but really to focus first on just getting yourself to a better place. And if that takes adding in some meat for a while to get from 26 migraines a day to being pain-free, then, I think there's a lot to be said for that. Can you sort of take us through like what your typical day is like now in terms of your diet?
Well, in the morning, I'll have a coffee with heavy cream, which I never had before because, of course, fat was the enemy.
Yes.
For lunch, most of the time, we'll do either salad with some sort of meat. We're big fans of hemp seeds. So we'll either have hemp or have meat and some other leafy greens and some olives with stuff with almonds. And if my husband wants a dessert, we'll do like a bit of berries with cream. And for dinner, we'll have quite the same actually at this time of the year, because we do try to eat in season. So now the weather is a bit warmer, so we'll do either salad with fish, or we'll do some asparagus with fish. So we try to have either one egg meal or either a fish meal in the night.
What were the main foods that you were eating before that are no longer a part of your daily diet?
Oh, fruits. I was eating so many fruits and I was having like smoothies all the time. I was not eating fats. I realized that. Now I can, if I feel hungry sometimes or I feel just a lack of energy, I'll have a spoonful of olive oil and it changes everything. And all my body I felt was like thirsty for fat, but I did not realize that. Even I went to my hairdresser last week, and she's a friend of my mom's that I've known since my birth, right? And she hadn't seen me in about a year, and she touched my hair and she said, "What did you do? Your hair is so much thicker than it used to be." So I think it's also due to my new diet.
And it sounds like you're taking advantage of some intermittent fasting, really having 2 main meals and then you coffee for breakfast.
Yes, we do try. we did try so many things, because during the winter, I have to say that I've been having troubles not having migraine. I don't know if it's because of the light. Let me find my words in English. In November, we only have about 6 to 7 daylight hours with the sun up. And from the end of November until, I would say, February, my migraines came back. And so I'm still trying to understand and experiment. It probably maybe because also it was my first winter with the plant. So maybe my body has to get used to all that too. But during the winter, because I still had pain, I tried fasting, which I was really scared of, because before it used to, if I skipped a meal, I would have a migraine. So I did 3 days of fasting, and after the 3rd day, it stopped my migraine. And we try intermittent fasting, and my husband lost like 20 pounds. So we do find a lot of benefits in trying different techniques and tools, I would say, that you do suggest in the book and in the academy. I would just also like to add that we have a sled dog sanctuary. We adopt sled dogs from races, dogs that were on chain and all that, and now they live free in yards and pens and all that. And I have been doing this for 16 years.
Oh, wow.
And I would say in the past 6 years, I was not able to participate in fall training because of migraine. This year, I even rode my sled in November, which was the first in I don't know how many years.
Wow.
So I couldn't stop crying. Yes. In November, it was still good. I would say it started being a little bit more difficult in December.
So before you transitioned to the plan, were you still taking any medications for migraine?
Yes, I was. I don't know which one at that point, but I was taking daily medication.
Okay. Daily, like abortive medications, like triptans or something like that?
Exactly. Oh no, I was taking Topamax at the time,
Mm-hmm.
plus triptans if I had. Topamax gave me suicidal thoughts, but I am a super positive person, so that was very
That's scary.
Mm.
Yeah. Are you on anything now, or were you able to kind of wean yourself off of those things?
I do not take any medication anymore. This is a big, big, big win.
That's huge, right?
And I have to say, even though I said that I still get migraines, that I did last winter, they were not migraines where I was vomiting and being like almost paralyzed. I could still get up and do my day, which was not possible before. So
Right.
even in the winter, even if I say I still had some pain, I do see a big difference.
We get a lot of people who ask about, who come to the plan and they're on medication and then they start doing better and then they wonder about what to do. And I was just curious to know, how quickly did you lose the Topamax and get off the triptans?
Oh, right away.
Right away.
I started the plan in May, and I just decided, okay, I'm going to do this. And that's what I did. But I don't know if CBD oil counts as medication, but it's a supplement that I will take if I do feel that a migraine is coming. And that does help relieve the tension. But now when I feel that pain is coming, I just lay down and it goes away, which would never have happened before.
Mm-hmm.
Right. You mentioned before that you, at least initially, were keto. Are you still maintaining keto, or are you a little more flexible with your carbohydrates now?
I would say we're low carb, but I would tend to get back to keto.
Gotcha.
Because I do feel that I have more energy. Also, I don't know if it's all in my head, but I feel that I'm contributing more to the success of my health.
Right.
Like I can feel that if I get a migraine for whatever reason, at least I was keto. But that's that's me. That's just me.
I understand.
I'm extreme.
Yes, yeah, I could tell. So you've mentioned that it gets really cold where you are. For our listeners, where do you live?
We live in northern Quebec.
Gotcha.
And it can get to as cold as minus 45 Celsius.
Is that where you grew up?
Yes, it is. And we spent about 10 hours a day outside. So even in the cold weather.
Yeah.
So, but when I was a kid, I lived in Thailand for a few years. And I love the warm weather. So I'm not a cold weather person.
Oh, wow. Well, that's impressive.
When I was in Thailand, I didn't get headaches.
Yeah.
They don't have gluten.
Right.
And the weather is so different.
Yeah. The sun definitely plays a role. And as you mentioned, trying to figure out the ways to sort of mitigate what happens in the wintertime. For many of us, are not living in the ideal climate when it comes to sun exposure. So I think that we'll continue to get better about figuring out how to minimize the impact of that, because it probably does play a role and probably had something to do with why you were better in Thailand.
Yes. And also something that was really important for me is what you said in the Bee Slaying Academy. You started off saying, well, one of the best lifestyle would be to be living in the forest, off the grid, but who can do that nowadays? And I was like, me,
That's
right. So I was not super appreciative of my lifestyle, I must say, until that point. Because it was not my first choice to live off the grid like we are living. So we were kind of thrown in that direction by life. But now that I understood that for my brain, it was very good, it made me really more appreciative of my lifestyle.
For sure,
Because
yeah.
off the grid is physically challenging, very physically challenging.
Mm-hmm.
And when you have a migraine and you don't have running water, you still want to have a hot shower or a hot bath, But I would just lay down and appreciate the fact that there is no sound, no noise, nothing, that I could really have a good rest. And that's what I did emphasis on. So it did really change a lot my perspective on my lifestyle. And I want to thank you for that.
That's really interesting. Yes, we've loved the posts that you put into Facebook,
Yes.
and we like seeing the little glimpses into your lifestyle, and in some ways we're very envious
That's
because
right.
we would like to be, further off the grid than we are, and
Mhm.
we're trying to figure out, how we can sort of minimize the consequences of that in our own lives. That's probably too,
Yeah.
part of why your recovery has been so dramatic and swift in some ways, because you had these other pieces that were already in place, and then it took just a few other little things to sort of finally reap all the benefits from the life that you were leading.
I do believe so.
And I think it's great that you said you're a yoga teacher and you teach meditation. I think those are some of the meditation piece and the mindfulness piece. That's something that often gets neglected, so that you already had that in place is so key.
Yeah, you're so right, because it's very easy to slip in bad thoughts and bad disposition when you're in pain.
Yeah.
And it applies to any illness, really.
Right.
Right.
Jenny,
Yes.
I wanted to thank you because I had posed a question about hormonal migraine because you were saying that you were walking that amount of steps and all that, and I was so trying to figure out, when can I change?
Yes.
And your answer was really strong. Like strong is maybe not the right word, but it was really truthful. Like you just implemented the plan. You cannot start saying that it works or not, and it's exactly what I needed at that point. I was like,
Well, good.
oh, okay, she just told me so.
A little tough love, right?
Yeah, I was. Yeah, exactly. And I thought, wow, that's great. Yeah, that's what I needed at that point.
Well, it took about a year of experimenting myself. And so I just wanted for people to not give up after trying it for a month, because I know there's a lot of little tweaking that has to be done, and you have to develop that for yourself and figure that part out for yourself within the framework. So I just was afraid of people giving up. So thanks for hanging in there and trying it.
Yeah, and it sounds like
thank you.
You took it in the spirit that it was intended.
That's
as
right.
well.
That's right.
Yeah. Yes.
All right.
It's not too good to stay in the comfort zone.
That's right. That's
yes,
right.
Yes.
So I want to be respectful of your time, but is there anything else that you'd like to say, particularly to anyone who's listening right now and maybe is in a similar situation to where you were, a year or so ago? I know it's a scenario that a lot of people find themselves in. Anything that you'd say in particular to those folks?
Well, I can say that since I've been, since I took the course, the Bee Slaying Academy course, I feel like I'm an ambassador of the course.
That's great.
I always have to say, I don't own that company. I have no benefit except your well-being, because because now I feel that I open up more, because I have a kind of a solution to offer if somebody opens up in return.
Right.
That's something, another benefit that happened since taking Bee Slaying Academy. I decided to share publicly, like I've been blogging about migraine,
Great.
about my condition, but also about tools and how yoga helps and how my diet changed and all that. And people are opening up so much, and it's great that your book is translated in French, so I direct people to your book, as the academy is in English only. So
wonderful.
I don't know how many people have bought your book. So for me, if somebody comes to me and say they have a migraine, I just feel for them, because I know how it feels to be hopeless and to be lost in a system that does not understand migraine. and that you feel that you are alone and that nobody understands you,
Mm-hmm.
and discovering that you can implement a plan, that you can understand your triggers, but more than that, you can understand the threshold so that you don't have to be so worried about the triggers.
Mm-hmm.
And understanding that do not focus on what triggers, but do focus on what is working out for you. That was such a big change. Journaling about stuff that is positive
Right.
was like, whoa, this is so obvious. Why didn't I think about that? But it it changed my whole perspective about, it's not now, it's not an illness, it's just a condition
Mm-hmm.
that I work with and I move forward with. It's not like I'm not gonna move, like step over it or forget about it. I'm just gonna move forward with it. So it's way more harmonious. And this
Mm-hmm.
is what I wish to everybody. And I would so deeply want everybody to believe that there is possibility to ease the pain.
Mm-hmm.
This is so important. You can ease the pain without medication and without costing money, just making some changes and really reconnecting with our nature and how we were meant to be.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Well, those are wonderful words of wisdom. Jenny and I talk all the time about how amazing the group of people are that we have in Migraine Neverland. We keep
Mm-hmm.
meeting these incredible people, and we feel really honored and privileged to have you as part of the community. And
Yes.
hearing your words now makes me even feel that even more. And that not only are you sort of putting into action everything that we put out there, which is the best gift to us that you could do, but also that you're now, trying to spread the word and help other people with it. Like I can't thank you enough for being part of our community and for everything that you're doing.
Well, I thank you because I also told about you. Told my now I have a new GP and she's really trying to help. But when I talked to her about the ketogenic diet, at first she was really, oh no, this is so bad.
Mm-hmm.
And then she took upon herself to go to a weekend where there was this medical conference about the ketogenic diet.
Yeah.
And when I met her again, she was emotional and she said, all that time I had it wrong.
Wow.
So, the impact that she is going to have on other people as well.
Right.
And it
Mm-hmm.
all started by just you somewhere in United States
Right.
having this idea that you want to cure yourself, and now you're helping people up north here, and it all starts from you two. So this is
Yeah,
how
it's so cool.
humanity should work, a circle of life, and I'm so glad to be part of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's very well said. Everybody like you out there is just making this happen and spreading the word. And it makes me very optimistic when we talk to people like you and we hear the changes that you're making and we hear about other doctors being receptive to it. It really makes us hopeful that, we can sort of move things to where they need to be. So, well, thanks again, Anne-Marie, for coming on the podcast. It's
Yes,
really
thank you.
been a treat to talk to you today.
Well, thank you very much. And thank you for all you do.
You're welcome.
And keep posting your videos of you with your dogs. We love those.
Yes.
Okay, I will.
All right. Well, thanks again to Anne-Marie for taking the time to share her story on the podcast today. I really enjoyed listening to her. Mm-hmm. I must say, I really enjoy her accent.
Yes.
So it almost is like she's singing to you. Jenny, any final thoughts that you had about her story?
Well, I would just say I appreciated that she took my tough love in the spirit that I intended it. We do hate to see people get discouraged and give up at the first stumbling block. We know that it takes some time and that you have to commit to the process. And so I really loved seeing that she stuck with it, hung in there, and continued to try it and to find out how it was going to work for her.
Yeah, we talked about some of our most significant success stories that we've shared all have a healthy dose of grit and perseverance in common, and she's one of them for sure. She's definitely gritty, and because of that, took your advice in the right spirit.
That's right.
She also talked about, which we haven't covered that much on the podcast, but the kind of the stigma that migraineurs can have in the medical community. So she certainly sounded like she encountered this quite a bit in her journey over the years in the medical system, where sometimes migraines are treated as less significant or less real than other physical disorders that are manifested by clear signs and symptoms that a doctor can detect. So the fact that migraines are kind of an invisible issue that you only experience in your own head oftentimes makes it hard for others to appreciate just how significant and debilitating it can be. And so sometimes that leads to doctors discounting it or trivializing it in some way, or making you feel as if you aren't heard. I also think that part of that too, that response from doctors, is born out of frustration that they've had many patients where they haven't had tools that helped, and being frustrated at someone continuing to come back to say, "I'm no better." It's kind of an easy out to say, "Oh, it just must be in your head," and then you're done.
Right.
So,
especially if they've never experienced migraines themselves.
If they have never experienced it themselves, it's really hard. I mean, it is hard to imagine. You can see where you could go down that road if you don't see any signs that there's a problem, and then everything that you're giving that person they're saying isn't helping. It's easy to just say to yourself, to rationalize it by saying, "Oh, it just must not be real." But we all know that's not the case.
That's right.
And I also, I think it was impressive that despite the fact that she'd been raised in a vegan family, and that had been kind of her way of life for a long time, that she was willing to depart from that in the interest of getting better.
Right.
And I think that's a really good lesson. I know that this is a topic that's often, heavily politicized. There's a lot of emotions around it, but I think that when it comes to your health, put that first. Putting that first sometimes, makes the most sense. And she did that, and she focused on, what do I just need to do to get well, and that's and put that as top priority in whatever that takes. And then once you get to a better place, kind of reevaluate and reassess and figure out what you want to do going forward.
Right.
But see the plan as you would any other treatment or therapy, that this is something you're doing for yourself to get well, and it's okay for that to take top priority for a while. You're worth it, and then at some point once you are healthier, think about how you want to make things work going forward. But I thought that took a lot of courage for her to go down that road.
Definitely.
All right. Well, thanks again to Anne-Marie. I know your story will help a lot of people, and we really appreciate you taking the time to share it. We are always inspired by your posts on Facebook, so we hope you will continue to share what life is like in the remote regions of northern Quebec. Okay, that's all for this episode. Jenny, what is it now time for everyone to do?
Slay the beast.